It takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to help cancer patients through their journey. Athletic males, for whatever reason, and they're playing a sport and get hit in the genital area, and after a while the swelling does not go down, and they'll go to see their physician, and they'll notice that one of the testicles is inflamed, swollen, and from there, that's how it's found. Anywhere from the age of 17 to about 35 is the target population for this type of cancer.
My name is James Lynch. I'm from Bogota, New Jersey. I'm a criminal justice major. And my whole life I played sports from the time I can remember. Played everything: soccer, baseball, football, basketball. In high school I played football and basketball. I went to Wagner College to play football. After the season ended, I transferred to Bloomfield to play basketball. September of 2009, I wasn't feeling very good. So my dad just, advised I go to the doctor and make sure everything gets checked out. Yeah, well, she originally just thought I had a urinary infection or something like that, so she put me on some antibiotics. And then that night, the next day actually, she called me and told me that it wasn't an infection, that she was gonna have to send me to get some more tests done. I had a few tests done. They didn't know what was wrong with me at first. Eventually I got a sonogram, and it showed that I had a growth in my groin region, and the next thing I knew, I had to go to a urologist, get a CAT scan, MRI, blood work, all that. They assigned me to a urologist, and I had a meeting with him. I had to get some blood work done, and after the blood work was done, I had to come back, and he asked me to come in by myself. Even though my father was there, my father waited in the waiting room, and then when he kind of told me that to come in by myself, I kind of knew something was up. I was diagnosed with testicular cancer, but I had non-seminoma, which is like a faster spreading cancer, and it's more difficult to treat.
The difference between seminoma and non-seminoma testicular cancer is just a cell type, where the pathologist goes in, looks under the microscope, and determines. Seminomas are more common and have a better prognosis than non-seminoma testicular cancers.
Yeah, I told my father once he came in. He tried to stay strong, but I could tell that I think he started crying, and I tried to not show any emotion because I didn't want my family to see me upset, but he was pretty heartbroken. I think we called my mother first. She was really upset. She just told me to come home right away, and we'll talk when we get home. And then right after, I called my twin brother, Pete. I think he might have taken it the worst because he doesn't really show his emotions very well. So we really didn't talk about it that much together, because I know just even talking about it with him really bothered him.
I think Peter took it badly, but he didn't show it, He's more of a, I think it affected Peter somewhat. I think it affected me somewhat, more than anyone else.
To be honest, I didn't think it was real when he told me that. That's the last thing I expected to hear. I think I was 20 at the time, so I thought it was a dream, to be honest. The first thing I thought of was I can't play basketball, and I was pretty upset. And then eventually I realized that I was sick too. But my first thought was that I can't play basketball.
He had always been he was a good student, he was a good athlete, and I was kind of shocked about the whole thing.
Jimmy was a great kid, hard-working player, physically strong, could shoot the ball well. He was kind of a combo guard. He could play the point, and he could also be a shooting guard. I do remember one day when he got the final call that it was definite. He was in practice, or we were about to start practice, and he got a phone call on his cell phone.
Yeah, I told most of them in person. At practice one day, actually. Me and Coach Holmes told them.
They were hurt, they were shocked, upset. It was difficult, news to swallow.
Yeah, I mean, those are some of the first people I told, my teammates, because they're like my brothers to me. They were there to support me, and I knew they'd be with me the whole time. They called me a lot because I wasn't able to be here, but they came and visit me, and, you know, they made sure I was all right. So after my surgery and my CAT scans, I found out that I had non-seminoma and that there was probably going to be more to it than just my surgery. I didn't really know what to expect. I was a little nervous.
There are 3 main treatment modalities for any type of cancer. You have surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation therapy. And we do utilize all 3 of these treatment modalities in the treatment of testicular cancer.
It was a few hours. It wasn't a major surgery, but it was big enough that I had to miss school for about like 3 weeks, a month.
And that's called orchiectomy, where you remove the testicle.
After I had the surgery, I was basically at home just resting for the next few weeks. It was very hard to go to the bathroom, actually, and I was a lot of pain when I would try to go to sleep. But after a few weeks, it did wear off. You know, I was under a lot of medication, so I really didn't feel it that much. After my surgery, I had to go back and, you know, receive some more scans, and they would let me know if that was it or if there'd be more to the process. I found out that it had spread actually from the time of my surgery to the time I was diagnosed. So I knew it spread, and they told me it was in my lymph nodes in my back and in my trachea now. So I was waiting for the doctor to see what the next step was.
Then the diagnosis is made again by a pathologist, and then from there this person would come to see somebody like us, a medical oncologist, to determine what further treatment, if any, is necessary.
I remember my doctor called me and he told me that surgery wasn't enough, and that since it had spread, I was going to have to either get surgery or start chemotherapy. And we chose to do chemotherapy right away because the surgery was a real complicated surgery, and, you know, it posed a lot of health risks. And the chemotherapy, I thought, was the most, after consulting with my doctor, was the most like direct and effective way to get rid of the cancer. Even though it would be real hard for a few months, I knew that after the chemo, it had like a 95% rate of curing the cancer. Well, immediately they set me up with a meeting to meet my new doctor, who was going to be an oncologist who specializes in cancer. And I met with him and the nurse practitioner, she's basically like a doctor. I met with both of them, and I was going to start the next week. And when I met with them, they just went over my case. They went over what to expect with chemo. You know, they gave me basically a guide to what to eat, you know, the symptoms that I was going to be feeling. Basically they went over everything with me so that there were no surprises. At first I was a little cocky, I didn't think it would. I thought I was young and it wasn't going to affect me that much. But then the night before my first treatment, I was actually pretty nervous. It was tough because my parents still had to work, even though I was sick. You know, they couldn't afford to not go to work. So my dad luckily had he's been working a while at his job, so he had a lot of sick days accumulated. So he would take a few days off here and there, and then my mom, they try and switch off.
I remember the first day he was here, and like many other patients that are just newly diagnosed, he looked like a deer in headlights. You know, it's scary, so many mixed emotions, but he was here with his brother and his parents. So having a strong support system really helps the patient through their treatment.
I remember the first day, I had no idea what chemotherapy was. In my head, I was thinking I'm gonna go into a machine and I'm gonna get radiation or something, but that's not what it is at all. The form of chemo that I got was through an IV, which is intravenous. When they hook up, basically they hook you up to an IV, and it's, you know, in your vein. You know, sometimes they use my hand, most of the time they use my vein, and basically all day I'd be hooked up to this IV and I'd be getting the necessary drugs that were gonna kill my cancer. The first day I felt fine. I was a little nervous. I mean, I was excited that I got it done with my first day, and, you know, I was like, all right, this wasn't that bad. You know, it's just a little boring, but, you know, I feel fine. And it really wasn't until my second round of chemotherapy that I actually started feeling sick, because, you know, the first round, it didn't hit me yet. My body was still fighting it off, and I didn't feel the effects of it right away. I had a real aggressive therapy. It was it was 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And I'd have chemo from like 7 in the morning to 7 at night. And I'd have a week on of chemo, then a week off, then a week on and a week off, and that's how it went every day. And then every Saturday after my chemo, I would have to go get a shot in my back to boost my white blood cells, because the chemo really weakened your immune system, and you were real prone to get sick. Something as little as a little cough or a cold could end up making me really sick. So I had to stay on top of that. I'd say it was like midway through my second round of chemo. That's when I really started I felt really sluggish. I felt really tired. Like the nausea that I felt was like incredible. It's probably the worst sickness I've ever felt in my life. Definitely the second week was when it really started to hit me.
Well, the only time I think he seemed down was, you see, chemo it knocks the hell out of you, and then what happens after it's over, the weekend after it's over, he was very sick all the time. And it was tough to see him like that. Then he would get stronger and stronger as the next week or two went on. But then he would have to go back to chemo. So the only time I saw him down was perhaps maybe when he knew he was going back to chemo, or right after the chemo was over and he was sick,
I would get mad easily. I would, I'd ask for things. I think I should have been a little nicer, but I think that was just an effect of me being depressed. The worst part was definitely the nausea, and that definitely made me not want to eat. For some reason, all the food had a metallic taste to it. I definitely felt weak. I had headaches a lot, fevers. Definitely I had anxiety at night, like I couldn't go to sleep. They had to put me on anxiety pills just because, going to sleep, knowing that I had to wake up and do this every day, it started to take a toll on like my mental health. I don't think my attitude maybe changed a little. I was confident I was going to get through it, but I didn't realize how hard it would be. Some days I got really depressed and just like, I didn't even want to talk to anyone. Like, I didn't want my parents to come with me. I just wanted to be in the room by myself and get it over with. If my temperature got over a certain degree, I had to go to the hospital.
We had to take him to the hospital about 3 different times in the middle of the night because his temperature had went up. And so, they just make sure he's okay and then send him home.
They told me there was a good chance, like a 90% chance, that during the chemo my hair would fall out, but they said there's also a possibility that it won't. Sometimes some people respond differently, but unfortunately my hair did fall out probably the end of the second week. I remember I woke up and on my pillow there was a bunch of hair. And at first I really didn't understand why there was hair on my pillow. I was like confused. And then when I went into the bathroom in the morning to brush my teeth, I was just going through my hair. And then I looked at my hand and I realized like the hair was staying on my hand. So that's when I realized like my hair was falling out. Because just the hair on my head, that really didn't bother me. But then as I got sicker, the hair, my eyelashes, my eyebrows, like all the hair on my body started to fall out. And that's what I didn't like the most, because the hair on my head, I could just wear a hat and no one would really notice. But when I started to lose my eyelashes and everything, you could tell that like I looked really sick and like I had bags under my eyes and stuff. There was one kid I saw who was in the room across from me. He was in there the first few weeks when I was there. I found out he went to Bloomfield College. He was in there getting a sickle cell treatment. And we talked a few times, like we hung out and had lunch. And like, he actually made me feel better about myself, because here I was like worrying about my cancer. And this kid had sickle cell, which is, he's gonna have that for his whole life and for the rest of his life. And he has a great attitude and he's smiling and stuff. And then it just made me, put my situation into perspective and realize that despite like how negative my situation is, there's people out there that would rather trade with me. Like, I know at the end of the day that I'm gonna most likely get through this and be fine and put it in the past, but then there's people like him that have to do this every day. After the chemo, they had to wait a week or two before I would get tested to see if the chemo worked. You know, just for the chemo to get out of my system, it probably took like four months. And my hair, it probably took about 5 months for me to actually get my hair back. And I lost 22 pounds at the time, and it, you know, it took me a while to get back, you know, going to the gym and feeling healthy again. I had to take a few actually like vitamins or something because I still had some of the effects of the chemo because it was still in my system. They said I wouldn't feel myself again for actually maybe up to 6 months. My life is awesome. I'm going to graduate this year in May. Unfortunately, I decided not to play basketball after, but I did take up coaching. I got a great opportunity. I coached football and basketball this year. It led to me substitute teaching also, and you know, I'm in the school all the time. I'm making good money, and it's a great experience. I hope to become a cop soon. I've applied for a few things. I'm waiting to hear back. If that doesn't work out, I'm going to plan on going back to school and get my, you know, my education certificate. I think I could have a career in coaching or teaching.